We're live. Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Water Wisdom Podcast. Get your water, grab your water. A reminder every week that this is always an activation, and we know that water is a conduit, right? It is the ultimate conduit. We are water, we are born in water. And so we are setting the intention now that through this podcast, that the highest love, the highest truth, the highest abundance flow into our water and code all of us to access our heaven on earth. Ooh, that feels good. Oh, take a deep breath, everyone. Take a drink of your water if you feel called. And we're going to dive in as I introduce our beautiful guest, Kerri Scott. Kerri and I met online. I mean, it's been 3 years because we connected at the very beginning for me of my online journey. And there was an immediate soul resonance with Kerri. Loved her energy, I could feel the kindness, the authenticity, the purity in her heart. And so we have stayed connected ever since. So naturally, I was like, oh, Kerri's frequency needs to be shared with the world. And so I'm so happy today to introduce to you Kerri Scott. She is a former astrophysicist, which I really don't even know what that means. So I'm going to have to ask you about that. And I didn't know that about you until I started diving in to get ready for this podcast. Okay, so I let me get back to my train of thought. She is an astrophysicist turned metaphysicist. And I love that. What we're going to be talking to you about today is her awakening journey. As usual, we always like to go there, don't we? And then her mission, which is very much rooted in what we call the Soul Selves Framework. So hang with us. We're going to get to some really, really juicy, amazing information that has everything to do with the full spectrum of light. I'm just planting that seed. It's so magical, this beautiful framework that she's bringing to us. So let's go ahead and dive in and welcome the beautiful Kerri Scott. How are you today?
Hi. I am, yes. I'm getting like tingles just listening to you speak. So I'm really good.
Oh, I love it. Oh, I love it. I love that resonance, that frequency coming through. Beautiful. It warms my heart. Okay, so where shall we start, Kerri?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's such a good question. Um the thing that jumps to mind is I have to go back to like our beginning. And I was in the process of writing my first book, my memoir, which still hasn't been published, but it has been such a huge like part of my awakening journey because I kind of like wrote it as it was happening. And I got to this point where I was really beginning to understand the whole like concept of self-love. Like I'd had this huge kind of like epiphany about it. And you and I were both part of the same Abraham Hicks group, I think like Facebook group. And you had offered a self-love little sort of like daily workshop or something like that. And it just like immediately I was like, okay, yes, I need to be part of this. I need to know what she's offering, like what's happening, and like explore what self-love means in all these ways. And so that sort of just like I just found you immediately because of that. And yeah, it's been brilliant ever since.
I love it. I love that. I love the magic of how we find one another. I love hearing the stories because it's always a magical flow that
Yeah.
brings us together.
Yeah.
Okay, keep going. Keep going.
Okay. So well, you'd asked about astrophysics, and that was what I studied at university. So I have a bachelor of science in astrophysics. And it's funny because not really like I never really worked as an astrophysicist. I did when I was in school, and I got to like sit with one of these huge telescopes and like point it out into the stars and like collect all this like energy that was coming in at all times. But I think the whole like point of me having that experience in my life was to be able to transition from that sort of like really logical mind and apply it into that more um like surrender kind of space that I'm in now. And like I like to say one of the things that had to happen for me for my or had to happen for my awakening was that I had to understand that everything is energy and frequency, right? And so I was able to really dive into that in my studies and learn what that looks like and what that means. And so I have sort of this like scientific mind working behind the scenes understanding things in a way, but now I'm able to embody it in a whole different way and apply that theory and um really like just put science kind of on level with everything else, right? Like it doesn't it's not more
Yeah.
powerful than anything else. It's just another way of looking at things, right? Another perspective. So
It's all connected, right? Let's
absolutely.
back up a little bit. Can you
Yeah.
start by telling us, what does an astrophysicist do?
So yeah, astrophysics is basically just like somebody who studies the universe, right? So it's not so much like Earth based geology or science. It's all space science. So just looking at looking at stars, looking at planets, and all of the things sort of like that encompass the universe. So
That's
yeah.
really interesting. Okay, so let's go back to your childhood then.
Mhm.
So when you were a little girl, did you have any kind of mystical experiences, that intuition that something wasn't quite right here? Or were you very sciencey and did you just go into the sciences? Has that always been your direction?
You
Was
know,
very grounded.
there's always been kind of like a fascination in science. I think like with any kid, like we go through that dinosaur phase, right? And everybody wants to be an archaeologist, and like that's still sort of part of my inner child, I think. But it's funny, like as children we're so pure, right? Like they're like I think we're all having mystical experiences at that point because we don't know any different, right? We haven't been conditioned out of that connection to ourselves that is, that is what we are when we are born. And so I remember me and my girlfriend would do all kinds of like little ceremonies and have these conversations about ghosts and something else out there, right? We were always kind of like inviting that in, but I don't think it was until later that I started to sort of question that and put it aside, and it sort of felt like maybe it wasn't something to be dabbling in, for lack of a better word. But like now I have a whole different opinion about that and a whole different perspective on it. So I like it that that understanding kind of was so present there, and I think it wasn't questioned as a child. But then you get into like early adulthood and through your teen years and all of that sort of like ego. As you're building your ego, you need to like be put into those situations where you're sort of tested, I guess, right? And sometimes you get through it and sometimes you come up with like another layer of ego that is hiding that light of your soul that's originating there. So yeah.
That's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that. I can identify with you as a child that I was looking at astronomy magazines all the time. Like I loved learning about the stars. I was always researching like psychic ability, ghosts. Was really into ghosts. Like I wanted to know more about the untouchable. That's the term that comes through for me, the untouchable. And I feel called to share a story with you. So, when I was younger, I was in 4th grade and I had to write a research paper. It was the first research paper that I had to write on my own and not in a group. We had to choose really anyone. We could choose anyone. And the person that I chose was Marie Curie.
Very
And
cool.
so, yeah, so for those who are watching or listening, you probably have heard of Marie Curie. She was a huge way shower in the scientific community, like the first, I believe she was the first female to win a Nobel Prize within science, or really just to win a Nobel Prize. She was a path forger. She created the X-ray. And so she was able to help a lot of the soldiers in World War I to, if they got a broken arm, they could x-ray it and they knew how to fix it. So she was like huge pioneer. She also carried around different like plutonium and shit in her pocket because she liked it because it glowed bright green, which really irradium eventually killed her. And like when they go to like look at her documents and stuff, look at all of her old research, they have to like garb up because it's all still so irradiated. I don't know what the right term is, but I'm just sharing the best I can. So my point is, I had this experience as a fourth grader. And looking back, as I started this awakening journey, I was kind of like observing my behavior as a child. And I was like, huh, I wonder why. Like, why Marie Curie? Why was she the one that I chose? Because there's always a reason, right? And so one day I'm driving down the street and this was in my awareness. And I just asked, I was like, can you show me? Like, I'm curious. Show me why. And I had this huge download about, like, I don't know if I was her or in what way I'm connected to her in some way. I don't know if I was her family member, but then all of these synchronicities started coming through. Like, her oldest sister was Sophia. My daughter's name is Sophia. She has Russian origin. My daughter's name is Nadia. I chose that for the Russian origin for whatever reason. I was intuitively guided for that to that. And then I can't remember specifically, but birth date. There was something about my birth date that's connected to her. Her birth date is 11/7. My birth date is 7/11. So it's just really interesting when you look back at, connect with that inner child and you look back at those childhood experiences, like what's there for us. And we
Yeah.
don't have to know, right? We don't have to know. We don't need to understand what was the trauma, what was the pain, or what was the joy, what was the excitement. But uh, we get to bring awareness to it. And sometimes there's a fun, cool, magical message there for us.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm like, just so you know, I'm like in full chills. My eyes are tearing up. I'm crying listening to this because it's just like something's just fully moving through me as I hear you say that. Like
Interesting.
yeah, there's
I
something
got
there.
chills now too.
And okay, I probably wouldn't see like there's a tear running down my face. I probably would only typically tell my husband this, but because of your story, I'm going to share this with you too. And my son, he just turned 13. He's really into atomic physics. Like, he watches all these things on YouTube, and when the movie Oppenheimer came out, he really wanted to see it. Like, he made a point of asking us to be able to watch it, and so my husband took him when it came out in the movie theater and everything. And there was something going on with my son, and I can't remember exactly, but I was at work, and it's such a, like, when I'm working, it's such a beautiful space to be able to just tune in, because I have like such this huge amount of like alone time. And I sort of like you said, like I asked, like, what, like, who, I think I was asking, like, who is my son's like spirit guide, or something to that effect, anyways. And I got this like this name, like Julius Opong. And so when I googled it, the first person that came up was Julius Oppenheimer. And he doesn't usually go by the first name Julius. I can't remember in the movie what he actually refers to himself as, but like, I'm like, oh my gosh, is my son like, an incarnate, like, is this like his another life for him or something like that? Or is that his guide? Like, but it all just kind of like, made sense. And I was like, wow, okay, this is incredible. Like, maybe there's more, something to this that I need to explore with him, kind of thing. I see. Okay, go for it.
That is really cool. Now you say that, and now I'm thinking too, a huge connection that I am just now making with Marie Curie is her initials are MC. My married name is Clark, MC. Okay, this is really interesting. This is why I'm like, why am I supposed to tell this story? This is why I just follow my intuition. That's okay. So keep going. So let's keep going with this. And the name of the movie is Oppenheimer.
Oppenheimer. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna have
Yeah.
to check that out.
Well, so he is like, do you know who Oppenheimer is? I can.
The name sounds familiar, but no, I would be lying if I
So, no, no, no. He's the one that basically like created the nuclear bomb. Like, he put the whole, like, he was the scientist that sort of like really had the energy to put the whole thing together. So like, he's a huge name in the world of physics, and especially atomic physics and stuff like that. So it's so interesting, yeah, that came in as a download, because I wouldn't know who Julius was. Like, I would had no idea that his first name was actually Julius. And then like, to have that like just drop in, I that's what I love about like connecting with spirit and asking, because you truly just can surrender, and there's so much, there's an infinite amount of information there when you trust it and just allow it to flow in, right?
Yeah. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine yesterday, and we agreed that, uh, he was like, why do we decide to speak to ourselves in riddles? You know, why do we decide to breadcrumb ourselves? And I see this vision of sitting up, in a spaceship, just shooting the shit with everybody that we're going to come down here with, being like, oh, yeah, I'm the badass. I'm just going to like breadcrumb the F out of myself for years. It'll be fun, guys. Let's do this. And then you get down here like, fuck, we're human. What? So it is an interesting. And do you notice too the wave of connection where I feel like there are times where I'm putting together a whole galactic puzzle, in like a week, and then it's like crickets for a little while. For me, it tends to come in bursts.
Yeah. Yeah. I
But
totally, yeah.
yeah, and part of the what I've noticed too is that part of the power and part of the bigger opening is to actually just surrender to the not knowing,
Yeah.
because when we surrender to the not knowing, then it like magically comes in. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So did you share this with your son?
No, I haven't actually told him that. No, I don't know how he would respond to that yet.
Yeah,
We're still,
yeah, I was curious. I don't know. That's it. See, my kids they're in this space where, well, my 2 older, 17, 12, both girls, and then James is almost 10, and, uh, because of the age that they were when I started this wild journey, they just would be like, "Oh, okay, mom." I mean, like, they believe me, but they're like, because I tell them crazy ass stories, and they're like the best audience ever. They're like, "Oh, wow, that's amazing. Cool. Tell me more." So funny.
well, I was driving my son to his parkour class last night, and usually he listens to music, but for some reason last night he didn't have his earbud in, and so something kind of got us started, and like I just was like channeling for him and like sitting there talking in the car, like trying to get as much information out as I could while I had the opportunity. And I don't know if he like got any of it or if any of it resonated for him. It was like one of those rare opportunities to have his like full attention. And like before I sent him off to his class, I'm like, just so you know, honey, I'll probably tell you this many times. Like it's this is not just a one and only thing.
I
I'm gonna,
love it.
yeah, yeah,
I
it's,
love it. They get exactly what they're supposed to get in that moment, don't they?
yeah.
So cool. So you have 1 son?
I have one son, one daughter. Yeah,
1 Okay, how old's your daughter?
she is now 11.
11. Oh, okay, so 11 and 13. Ooh,
Yeah,
those are good magical ages.
yeah, they're pretty wonderful.
So what's your daughter like as far as sharing the kind of mystical with her?
She's really tuned in actually. It's quite cool. She is like both of my kids are so aware, like so self-aware. And I always like want to like reinforce that for them because I think there's something so beautiful in being able to access that at an early age, right? And to know that like that how important that self-reflection is. She definitely like knows that she feels other people's energies. And so now it's just sort of like helping her manage that, right? Like, and know what belongs to her and what doesn't belong to her, because she's extremely sensitive. And like I mean, I love it. And she's kind of taking that path right now, probably the same that I did when I was her age, like where it's sort of coming out more as like ghosts and sort of the paranormal kind of avenue. So I'm just trying to support her in that as much as I can. So
Oh, that's beautiful. Isn't that a beautiful space to be in?
yeah,
You
it's just,
know? Mm, I
yeah.
love that. Ugh, kids are awesome. I love seeing my kids explore and grow. It's so fun. Thank you for sharing all of that about your beautiful children. Okay, we're kinda all over the place here,
I know.
but that's okay. I like it, whatever. We're just going with the flow. Okay, so let's go to your kind of awakening journey.
Sure.
Let's
Yeah.
go, and I know we have many awakening experiences, don't we?
Yeah.
Will you please, may I ask you to share one of your significant awakenings so that we can identify and hold space for your experience?
Yeah. Okay. So I was thinking about this, and I don't know if I've like really talked about this I've written about it a lot, but I don't know if I've talked about it. And I just want to sort of like, before I say anything, I want to sort of preface, I don't know if that's the right word. Like, I love listening to other people's awakening stories. I love reading other people's awakening stories. I've been studying them, and that's what's like led me to this Soul Selves framework, which we might get to eventually. But like, one of the things that I've learned is that, we all have a very different path of awakening. There's like hundreds of them. And for me, um, one of my path was, um, that I had a twin flame who helped me awaken, right? Like, the twin flame is a path of awakening that I don't think people talk about a lot. And I know twin flames kind of like, there's a bit of like controversy about them right now, but I can't think of a better word that describes that relationship better. So I'm still gonna like embrace it and own that one, because I really, I really love it. And so, I met this person. I think he was probably in my life since birth, essentially. It wasn't until, I don't know, we were in our early 20s that we finally like connected one on one. And that first embrace that I had with him was absolutely pure magic. Like, as soon as we hugged one another, there was just like this flash of green energy that just like lit us both up. And honestly, like, it felt like we'd kind of gone into this portal, and like all of our past lives, all of our lives to be, like, all sort of like flashed into my awareness all at one time. And it was kind of like just like going right out into space. Like, there was just this sort of like cosmic, I don't even know how to describe it. It was just like everything in that moment dissolved, and we were just in the universe. We were part of the universe. And so, like, we, both kind of like let go of each other, and we're just like, what just happened? Like, what was that, right? And it was like, you know, the beginning of this whole journey. And it was such a long journey, to get to where I am now. But that definitely was like a pivotal moment that, like, I've never felt anything or like seen anything like that again. So, like, I will never forget that. So
Do you know what I'm hearing? Everything, everywhere, all at once.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's what hit me when you were saying that. That is really interesting. Okay, so you connect with this person,
yeah.
you
So
hug them for the first time, and
yeah.
then what opens up for you,
Oh
for
my
the
god.
2 of you?
Yeah, it was amazing. Like just the deepest, like purest, like unconditional love that I have ever felt. And like, he, like, I recognize it now. I didn't know what was happening at the time. I just thought, "Oh, I'm in love. This is amazing." Like, this person, I'd thought about this person a lot before ever actually like dating them. And so it was sort of just like, of course we're supposed to be together. Like, I knew this was going to happen years before it even happened, kind of thing. And so, he lived in the States, I was in Canada, and we had this sort of long distance relationship, over a year or so. And just like every time we were together, it was just like we were just purely focused on one another. It was sort of like the rest of the world just disappeared. And it was such a beautiful time. Like, I just revel in all of the time that we spent together, and the phone conversations that we had. It was like, um, telepathic conversations. We would dream about each other, and he was trying to teach me how to, lucid dream. And, um, like, so much of our relationship was really like what I would say, like, based in spirituality, to a point where I didn't really even know what was happening, because I didn't know much about spirituality at that point. But it just all just felt so right. It was like coming home, right? Like, there was just that level of comfort, and everything that he spoke about on that sort of plane, like, just deeply resonated within me in a way that, like, I just knew everything he said was just pure truth. Um, I think, and okay, this is the part that I haven't actually talked about, um, publicly so much, but I think this is really part of my mission. Is that, like, that first spark for us, that first hug, really like opened something up for us. Like, I don't know if it was a Kundalini awakening, or like some people call it a heart-centered awakening. What I think happened for him was that, like, while I was sort of like easing my way into this whole awakening experience, I think he had like a much more severe kind of awakening happening, for him. And I've kind of like, just like, I have to I have to preface this because, like, he's not in this world anymore, and I'll get to that, but just like, I've had to pull all these pieces of information, um together to try and understand like what was happening for him. And I think like, I think he kind of like went into this awakening experience like so full on that like he was having trouble sort of like di- distinguishing between like the 5D and the 3D, and like there was probably so much going on for him that like it it didn't seem rational, or he seemed irrational. And so what ended up happening was he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder because of whatever it was that he was experiencing. And the thing was, we had broken up after about a year of dating, um and he wasn't telling me what was going on for him. He let me know that he was diagnosed, but in terms of like what he was actually experiencing, he sort of protected me from that, I believe, because I think it was so extreme for him that like, nobody really knew how to deal with it. He kind of like went the route of looking into like traditional, or not traditional, but like Western medicine. And from what I understand now, sometimes that can be far more like damaging than, not like, it definitely, don't get me wrong, it works for a lot of people, but I think in his instant it probably like caused a lot of extreme reactions as well. So after a year, like a year after his diagnosis, he took his own life. And I was like gutted, like so gutted when I learned that. uh and so probably for the next like almost 20 years, I was like deep in grief. Like, I was just frozen in my grief. Like, I didn't talk to anybody about it. I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know how to process it. I just sort of like moved on because he like, there was all these sort of weird things surrounding our relationship in terms of like, we weren't together anymore. So he was an ex-boyfriend, and then the way that he died, there's a lot of stigma. And then because of like the mental illness, there's stigma around that. And so just nobody talked about those things so much, 20 years ago. And it wasn't until, I'm gonna say probably like my 40th birthday, I went into a float tank. I gifted myself like a float deprivation tank experience. And it was it was so intense because like up until that point, I really had put anything um spiritual aside, because anytime I kind of went there, like in terms of meditation or yoga, like anytime there was that amount of stillness, bam, like he was right back there, and that grief was so present for me. And it was like they were one and the same. Like, so I couldn't be spiritual. I couldn't explore that without feeling that deep grief. And I was trying to ignore that. I was like putting that out of my life. Like, I was not allowing that to happen. And so being in this deprivation tank allowed me, like, I had no choice. I had to be present with it, right? And in order to sort of like calm my thoughts, I remembered like this meditation practice I had learned when I was a teenager, about like focusing on each one of my chakras. And I did that. And when I got to my heart, that green light again kind of like melted into the water around me. And like the tears started flowing. And like, I don't know if you've been in a deprivation tank before, but it's salt water. And so salt water from the tank was mixing with my eyes, and my eyes were burning. And I'm like, okay, I have to figure this out. Like, this grief is so it's running my life. Like I've ignored it for so long, but it's completely dominating everything that I do. There wasn't a day that passed that I didn't think about him, and like cry in private and like have all these moments, and like I wasn't functioning as a normal person for a good portion of my life, even though on the exterior it looked like I was married, I had kids, and like was working, doing all of the things, I was checking all the boxes, but like I was not whole. I wasn't myself. I was kind of this shell of a person. And so once I took that grief and like stared it right in the face and essentially started writing about it, that's when everything started shifting and downloading and coming in, and like um he was there every single step of the way, and like I can look back now and realize like I was always meant to like listen and tune into him, and he part of his mission, and he told people this before he left, this like before he transitioned, that he had work to do on the other side, and I feel like I'm honestly just like kind of a vehicle for that, right? And that is sort of part of our purpose as twin flames, is for me to just sort of surrender to that and like allow whatever messages it is that he has to just like flow through me and transmit that. Oh,
What an amazing story.
thanks.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. I have a couple of follow-up questions for you.
Okay.
How does the statement resonate with you? Your greatest resistance is your greatest superpower.
Oh, it's everything. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. How
Yeah.
long ago was it that you went into the deprivation tank?
Oh my gosh, so 7 years ago now. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
You look so young. I mean, that is young too, but you know what I mean? Like I
No,
never would have guessed.
no, it's like it's such a weird thing. Like I'm closer to 50 now than I am to 40, and like that's a weird like 3D reality. Like that,
Yeah, like, we're
right?
human too, like, let me human. You look
Yeah.
great.
Oh,
Wow, yeah, that is and that's what's ringing in my head as you're sharing that, and I say this to remind everyone who's watching or listening that your greatest resistance is your greatest superpower. That which you resist, that's the thing that you came to I don't wanna say conquer because that's just not the right word, to excel in. That's part of your mission. And so when I see people saying they want to step into mission, but they have fear around it, you really get to sit back and examine like what is the scariest part of me moving into mission? Is it being seen? Is it the thing that I like the specific thing that I want to share? Is it the money? Is it stepping out of the 3D job eventually? You really get to lean into that because that is your liberation. And it doesn't have to be some big, huge ordeal. It can be going and sitting out in nature and doing a meditation where you tune in with all your chakras. It can be that simple. So I would love to know after you had this experience, and I know that we can't shrink this like awakening down to that one experience. I get that. But I find that when I have these very powerful moments in my life, that there's an immediate shift in the way that I experience the world around me. It's like you get out of the tank and something big has changed for you. Can you share with us what you can recall about the shift from really that experience cumulatively, but that experience is like the tangible kind of pinnacle moment. Can you share with us how you experienced the world after that in some way? It's a big question, I know.
it's okay. I'm just kind of like waiting to see what drops in for that answer.
Beautiful.
Um, it's there. It's just like on the tip of my tongue right now. Um, okay, yeah, the thing that like really really shifted for me, and it was kind of a gradual process. Like I was looking at this grief, and then I was like I was learning a lot about suicide. I was learning a lot about bipolar illness. Like I was researching all of this stuff and drawing on like what information I could find about his life in that like year or two before he transitioned. Um, and so I was just like so open to all this information coming in. And there was this woman that I came across, Miriam Hasna, who is an incredible like spiritual teacher. And she had this quote. I'm probably not going to remember it properly, but like it was like this, the fact that like when we miss somebody, it's actually ourselves that we're missing. And so there was something about that idea that like shifted everything. And so it was like I was so focused on him that I'd kind of forgotten about me. And what I realized was that like he was just a reflection of my highest self, basically shining back at me all the time. Because when I was with him, it was like just unconditional love. And it was like, this is the amount, like my soul loves me so unconditionally. This is like how I can feel at any time. And it wasn't like I sort of like finally dawned on me, like I don't need him to feel that, because I was in that under this impression that like I would never feel that way again because he was gone and there was no way to like have that, physical sensation anymore. But it's like, no, Kerri, all of that was felt by me inside of me, and I can find that anytime that I want, right? Like anytime that I look for it, I can find that. And so that was sort of like the light bulb moment. And that's where this whole idea of like self-love really like went up for me, right? Like I don't know how else to describe it, but like I'm like, okay, no, I can learn to love myself unconditionally anytime. And now I have this like example in my mind, in my memory of what that feels like and what that looks like. So I can strive to find that again and again and again. And what I've learned more and more along the process is that like that is my connection with consciousness. That is my connection with source, whatever you want to call it. Like anytime that I'm able to just like relax and like drop all of that like identity and ego and just be consciousness, that is what is there. That is the purest sort of like self-love. So it's not necessarily, it's like it's not bubble baths and chocolate. It is connection. Like I'm like this, what I call it's like transcendent self-love is this space that I just feel like destined to tune into over and over again as often as I can. And it's so funny because the last time we spoke, we said the same thing, and then I forgot it, and I can like over the past 2 years, I look back in my like journal and my notes, and I'm like, I've rediscovered this fact over and over and over again. All of a sudden, I'll have this download. I'm like, I'm supposed to just connect and just stay in that space for as long as I can, because it's like that is the most powerful thing that I can do in in this human body. And then I forget, like, and then months later I'll be like, oh, I'm supposed to like it's so funny how many times I have like discovered this and then completely forgotten. And I think I'm finally like just in a space, and I'll probably look back on this 2 years and be like, oh, I forgot that. But I feel like I've like walked through this door where like I'm like so much more able to like embody that and just like remember that when I wake up in the morning and just be like, okay, yeah, that is who I am. That's my purpose. That's like what's happening. We're going to do that today and we're going to just embody it.
Wow. 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 That is so amazing. I love what you say about finding that within yourself. Realize the realization, and so many of us do this, and this is not a judgment, but so many of us do this, where we lose ourselves in someone else. And this is like the ultimate goal of the expansion journey really is to lose yourself within yourself, or to find yourself within yourself, as opposed to losing yourself within someone else. And your story resonates very deeply with me, in the way of that twin flame journey. And I get what you're saying. There is a big stigma around that, but I do also feel that it is a path of awakening. And just like everything has been inverted and skewed, there are groups who take that and use it for their own terrible purposes. However, that path does exist. There are many paths to awakening. And this is something I've never really shared. I had a similar experience in a relationship. Not He didn't, pass away or anything like that. But when we met, and this happened, I'm telling you the date for whatever reason, in March of 2021, I connected with him, which was probably actually around the same time that you and I connected. I really had just come into the online space, and I connected with him. Um, and it was an immediate activation. It was like I saw myself within him, but then I also lost myself within in the codependency that's pretty much every 3D relationship is colored with, right? Like, we're taught to be codependent because that's all we know until we know something else. And the long and short of it is, we were very deeply connected until he got COVID. He got COVID and he ended up in the hospital. He ended up on a ventilator for 25 days.
Holy cow.
And he was in Louisiana. So way far away. I'm in Indiana, and I'm a nurse. So it was like the ultimate letting go, because I only knew his son. I didn't know anyone else in his family. There was no way for me to like get updates or help because I was too far away. The only communication I had was with his son, but his son is a young man. I wasn't gonna like call his son and be like, "Oh, what's going on?" Um, and it was a full on like healing remembrance for me, because I helped him to heal. I was part of, yeah, I'm not taking credit, but I was part of the cooperative components for his healing journey while he was on the ventilator. Like, full on downloads. It was next level crazy visions of our past lives together. And so the connection of what you're describing feels very familiar to me.
Yeah.
And without going into the details of how all of that dissolved, um, he just kept showing me. I just kept saying, when something would go wrong or didn't feel aligned, go in, go within, go within, go within. Talk about dissolving codependency on a very, very deep level. And when I realized that what I was trying to fulfill or access through him could only truly be fulfilled and accessed through self, my whole world changed.
Yeah.
My whole world changed. And to still see him through the eyes of unconditional love, that this was the role that we were supposed to play for one another. And to like, when I was able to actually really let go in order to allow myself to expand and experience the truth of me, everything shifted. Everything shifted. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
S- so interesting.
Yeah. I think that's so much the like absolute purpose of that twin flame relationship, right? And so often I see it in these like online communities for twin flames that kind of gets lost. And there's it's a really tough one for people to hear that like you have this amazing connection with this person and you're supposed to just let that go and focus on your own healing. Like, what? Like, how do you do that? But that truly is the essence of it. Like, when you can like turn that around and shine that light on yourself to be able to like do all the work. And that work is hard, right? Like, people often, like, I'm fully guilty of it. Like, there's so many things that I've put off and put off. And like, grief was the biggest example for me in terms of like not looking at it and not like dealing with it and healing it. Uh, but now, like, now I've kind of like flipped that around again. And like, anytime something triggers me, um, I want to know more about that. I want to know what that is. I want to know what it is about me that I need to look at, right? Like, it's so beautiful because every relationship that we have, um particularly the codependent ones, I mean, they're just shining back on us like what we need to learn about ourselves. And there's so much to learn, and so much growth and expansion that happens when we are able to like own that and take responsibility for what's going on, like moment by moment.
Yeah, and I feel so much power in the relationships that I have now, but it was super painful to watch those that no longer serve dissolve. And there are times where we get the nudge, this is not a person you should be connected with anymore. And if you don't listen, it'll turn into the famous kick in the shin, where and what I'm experiencing with the energy now is all masks are being removed. Nothing shall be hidden anymore. This is very clear to me. And if you choose to ignore the nudge, whatever it may be, it will become so loud. And if you're not careful, it'll become really painful that you have no choice. And so just listen to the fucking nudge, okay? We can be so damn stubborn. And I would say that I feel less stubborn than I used to be because I'm always observing, like you say. Like I'm kind of like, why? Like, what was that person reflecting back to me? Why am I feeling this way? Why do I want to react in that way? And just becoming the observer of self. Okay, now let's segue. I want to talk about the Soul Selves Framework because this is so aligned, right?
Yeah.
Um, I I leaned into this a little bit because I wanted to have an understanding of it because it's magical and beautiful. And I would like for you to please share with us what does that even mean? What does Soul Selves Framework even mean? Can you describe it to us so that we can understand in some way really how it's related to letting go of all the shit that we just talked about because it's all connected. You like that segue?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So, okay, the Soul Selves Framework is truly like my own understanding. Like, it's like me looking at all of these awakening journeys, including my own, and like particularly my own, and like pulling all the pieces together and sort of just like organizing it in a way that made sense for me so that I could like understand, you know, where somebody was on their journey, where I was on my journey, particularly where I was on my journey. But it's interesting because now I can like apply it to like conversations that I have with other people. Like you just said, like you just totally described the observer self, which I'll get into, but like essentially there's like the way that I see it for purely for explanation is like if the ego and the soul were on a continuum, the ego would be at one end and the soul would be at the other. And so I've established 5 phases or markers on that continuum, right? Like I've just sort of like broken up the journey into 5 pieces, and there's very distinctive like words that people use or language that people have, behaviors that people have, actions people take in each one of these 5 um, markers uh, that like are repeated over and over and over again in everybody's kind of awakening journey. So it's I'm kind of just like dumbing it down, but like it's not it's quite complicated when you try and navigate through it. But the the funny thing is like the I don't want to say goal because like everywhere we are on this path is completely divine and exactly where we're meant to be, and there is no one place that is better than other. Some places just feel a lot better than others, and so like when I, I'm gonna break it down for you, the bodily self is the sort of the first stage, the vital self is the second, the thinking self is the third, the observer self is the fourth, and then there's the transcendent self. So um when we're rooted in our bodily self, we're like most rooted in our ego, and then when we have moved through all the phases to the transcendent self, then we're most connected with our soul. But um they are all just part of the same light. Like the one analogy that I really love to use is that of like a prism. So we have like the soul light, that white light, and this goes back to my astrophysics and the physics part of me. But there's this, white light that's shining through a prism, and when that light comes out on the other side, there's a rainbow, right? There's a spectrum of different colors that emerges. And so um, with the soul selves, it's like that light of consciousness, that pure energy of consciousness that we are all. That's it. Like we are that. When we put it into this human body, we get like this whole spectrum of um, energies that emerges. And so that is what the soul selves are essentially, is just all the different phases of perspective that we move through as we sort of return to remembering our own pure consciousness, right? I don't know if that makes sense, but
No, that was great. I love the analogy of the rainbow, of the prism and the rainbow, and it makes me think of it's like that fractal, it's like God is the oneness, and then we get to be that fractal experience, and it's all like micro macro, right? So we look at that bigger perspective, that macro perspective of you are the God, but you are also the fractal. And the God is contained in its entirety within the fractal, right? There's no separation. And so when we bring that down to a soul level, then and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like that prism, that white light, that oneness, it's all there, but we're experiencing, soul is experiencing itself in all of these different picture frames, essentially, all these different angles, different fractals of experience. And we get to take that all back to soul. And then ultimately, aren't we all really God experiencing itself?
right. Yeah.
Right. So, will you say the 5 levels again, or not levels? Say the 5 different aspects again.
So bodily self,
Okay.
vital self, thinking self, observer self, and transcendent self.
Okay. So, question: do we then? We were talking earlier about remembering, forgetting, remembering, forgetting. So then, do we move back and forth
Abs-
on that spectrum
Absolutely.
throughout our? Okay. So even when we get to transcendent self, we could still. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
It makes sense.
yeah, that's the fun thing about it. Well, maybe not the fun thing, but like this cool thing is like from moment to moment we can move anywhere along that spectrum. And there's so many examples of people like moving into the transcendent self from like the bodily self and having this flash or this glimpse of like understanding, and then it only lasts for like a split second, and then you sort of like transition back into a different place. Um and and some people like might stay in the bodily self their entire life, right? They may not have these other experiences in this lifetime, but um what gets really interesting is that we can be at different soul selves in different aspects of our lives. Like I like to use the example, like I've experienced transcendent self-love, but when it comes to like my personal abundance, I'm stuck in the bodily self a lot of the time, right? Like so these two aspects of myself are at different levels of awakening essentially. And so you can like dive into all the different aspects and sort of look at them through this framework and see where you are, because there's definitely like distinct patterns of behavior for each one in all the different aspects of our lives. So yeah.
That's interesting. This is what's coming through. I don't remember where I learned this, but I learned it from one of those cool guys that knows a lot of cool stuff. I can see him, but I don't know his name. What came through when you were saying that, when we're talking about, certain aspects of self are over here and some are over here. So when you're relating to, the kind of financial piece of it over here, and then another piece is over here on the spectrum. So there's this technique where if you have pain in one part of your body, you can actually take the energy from another part of your body, that feel good, that health and wellness, that you can, this is what he said. He said, focus on, let's say, the healthiest part of your body. What feels the best? So I'll give you a specific example. Let's say my heart feels the best. My heart feels the best, but like I stubbed my right toe and it's hurting. So what he says is, he said, you can imagine your heart as a ball of energy, right? So you're touching in with that green light in your heart and you're amplifying it. So you're placing all your focus on your heart. And y'all can do this if you want, if you've got a busted toe or something going on, like focus on your heart, amplify that energy, breathe into it. See the energy growing, 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 expand it even beyond your body, and then take that energy and send it to your toe. Send it to the part of your body that is crying out for support. And for whatever reason, that came in while you were saying that. And so, understand that the parts of you that are struggling, the aspects of you that are struggling, you can actually connect with those transcendent parts of you and ask them for help, right? And it's also kind of like reaching back to your inner child or reaching over to your inner child and calling that energy forward to experience the gift in the resistance, right? That superpower kind of thing. So that came through. I wanted to share that. Oh, I like that. Oh,
Yeah,
a lot. Very
that's
cool.
yeah. I am. I'm so glad you shared that. Actually, I've honestly I've heard that before. Like it reminds me of something, but I've never really thought about it that way before. And it's funny because like what occurred to me with this framework is that like, and it makes me think of the Abraham Hicks analogy of the sticks, right? Like you've got a pile of sticks and they're all different directions, but like if you just like pick up that one stick, I don't even remember how this goes now that I'm trying to say it out loud, but like everything kind of aligns when you focus on the one thing that's in alignment, essentially. And so, like, that's again where this purpose comes through for me is like, if I can just move into that transcendent space in whatever aspect of my life it's available to me, then all of those other aspects are just gonna like pick that right, like just align to that too, right? Like it's just everything will just line up and yeah. So it's just so important to come back to like holding that transcendent space. And I was gonna say something else, but I lost it. It's okay.
Maybe it'll come back.
It'll come
Yeah,
back.
the stick. I like that stick analogy. So she's like, let's talk about money, for instance. You've got a stick. On one end of the stick, you have like positive experience. The negative, or on the other end, you got the negative. She said, but you're still holding the stick. So sometimes you just got to put the damn stick down and go pick up another stick, a stick that's like the positivity is just radiating from that effing stick, and hold on to that stick for a little while. And this is about alignment, right? It's about frequency first. And you said something earlier about choice point, every a second to second choice. It's like every second is a frequency choice point. Every second is a frequency choice point. Like, what frequency are you going to choose in this second at this time? What response are you going to choose to the seemingly biggest asshole in your life who's actually your greatest teacher?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it shifts everything.
Yeah.
You get to choose.
Yeah. And so like I'm gonna give you a quick like run through that example in the soul selves. Like in the bodily self, we're not choosing anything. We're like totally reacting to just like as it's coming in, right? Like we have no awareness that choice is even available to us, right? When we move into the vital self, that's when we're like, there's that aha moment, and we're like, oh, I have some sort of control over this. Like, hold on a second. I can I can like participate in this. I don't have to react to this anymore, right? Like choice is now an option for me. So we take that into the thinking self and we're like, I am aware now that I have a choice. I can pay attention to my thoughts. I'm going to like forget, but I'm going to remember and I'm going to forget. And, but like, I can like actively now bring my awareness to the thoughts that I'm having at any given time. Right. And make those choices and decide. But then the observer self is like such a cool another step back in perspective where like, and you mentioned it earlier, you're like, this is now where like I take the thinking self and I'm like putting it in front of me and I'm just observing it, right? I'm like, oh, I am thinking those thoughts, or part of me is thinking those thoughts, but the the part of the observer that's watching is not identifying with that anymore, right? Like there's these emotions that I'm having and these feelings are coming up, but I'm just going to watch them rise in me, and then I'm just going to let them go, right? There's no judgment anymore. There's no holding on to it. It's just it becomes kind of like this whole meditation that happens in terms of like how you're interacting with yourself. And then when you move from that observer self into that transcendent self, it's just it's just pure bliss is what happens. And you're you're not identified with anything in particular anymore. You just are, and you're everything. And it's so beautiful to like experience that, and to like read people's experiences or hear people's experiences of that. But the real catch is like that space is happening beyond our mind, and we're trying to use our mind to understand it, and so like the words don't do it justice, and it's not an easy thing to try and describe, because it's so separate from the actual experience of understanding it.
Yeah. It's a feeling,
Yeah,
right?
it's
That's
it,
beautiful.
yeah.
Tell us, how can we access the Soul Selves Framework to learn more about it?
So I have most recently on my YouTube channel done sort of a four-part series, um, what I call the Soul Selves Sessions podcast. And that probably goes into the most depth that I've gone into in terms of like explaining it. I am currently working on um, the book that like explains it. It's like written, the manuscript is done, and I'm just tuning in to figure out how to like bring it into the world at this point. So there's definitely more information kind of in bits and pieces on my website, and then I have been sharing it on social media too, like in Instagram specifically. I've shared some more detailed insights, and yeah, that's probably the best way. I did publish a chapter in a book called Prosperity Codes that takes this framework and looks at prosperity specifically. So it like goes from that lack mentality full into the abundance mentality, and what all of those transitions look like between the two. So that is available
Amazing.
already on Amazon too. So yeah,
Okay, so we can access all of this on your website? Do you have
absolutely.
your links and everything on your website? Okay. Tell us what your website is.
So my name, kerriscott.com. Easy peasy. Yeah.
KerriScott.com. Awesome. And I'll make sure to include that link in the description here wherever you're accessing this. Okay. Well, before we go, I want to show you the frequency that I created for you. So, what I do for all of my guests is I'm going to pull this up and then I'll screen share. Is I like to tap into your work and hold a petri dish of water and just set the intention that what I was actually seeing, because it's a little different for everyone, I was seeing while I was doing this was I was listening to your Instagram and I was seeing your words as a writer. I think this is why it came through. Your words were flowing through my ear and then they were processing in my heart and flowing into the petri dish.
Whoa.
That was a cool visual. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. I will send this to you. And I took a couple of pictures and you can kind of see what came through. Do you see that?
I do.
And are you seeing me move it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So we're at the top, there's you can see that there's a lot of structure coming together. And then down here, there's kind of an epicenter.
Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting.
I'm curious, what do you see? What do you feel?
I see, honestly, the first thing that comes to mind is like a tumbleweed. I don't know why I say that.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah. Like it's
I
very,
like it.
I think.
Okay, I took a couple pictures. Let's see if I can figure out how to go to the next one. Come on.
I love
Oh,
that. It's like the coolest. like expression of energy. I think it's really powerful.
Isn't it magical? Now look at
Yeah.
that. It looks different. That
It,
it looks really different just tilted to the, up sideways.
yeah.
Now, I will tell you too, this actually had a crack in it. Do you see the crack down the middle?
So
That not many of them crack. So I feel that that's significant for
very
whatever reason. Powerful
well,
energy flowing.
like one of the ways that I describe the vital self is I don't know if you know the Leonard Cohen song Anthem, but he says, there's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. And
Ooh.
that so much is like such an embodiment of what happens to all of us is like so so often in this vital self or this variety of vital self moments that can happen is like we are so stressed or so under pressure or so like the weight of our ego is just so much that like we just crack open and all of a sudden we have this like transcendent experience, right? Like so many spiritual teachers like talk about this in terms of like they completely disidentify because they've like been in this place of depression for so long or like or maybe we have some sort of moment of psychosis that like breaks us open into the light. And I think that's what so much of the awakening journey is like misunderstood, right? And so there's sort of this communication that like that I want people to understand that like even though you're feeling depressed, you're probably having a very serious awakening experience, and there's a different way of approaching it than necessarily like the way that our society has approached those sort of like experiences. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Totally. Thank you for that.
yeah,
Do you wanna know what I see?
yes. Tell
I
me.
see a bird. I
Oh,
see like a hawk. I
yeah,
mean, I see the wings spread, and I was really drawn to the epicenter. I'm gonna try to take some more, pictures of this for you. And I was the epicenter right there, the kinda that darkened area, I was really drawn to that, and then when I held it back and I saw the bird, I feel like it was the head of the eagle or whatever. It's something in flight that was the first thing that I saw. So, I love birds.
yeah. Well, and hawks are very, very much part of my journey. Like when I see one, it's like instant like remembrance, like you're on the right path. You're on your
Oh, me too, I love it.
yeah. Uh,
I love that. Wow.
mhm.
Well, this has been magical.
Yes.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Yeah. I so appreciate like you taking the time to even like look into the work that I've been doing because it just is like it means so much to me to have somebody sort of take an interest and give me an opportunity to share it because I've really like poured myself into it. And if just knowing that you understand it a little bit better, it just yeah, that means everything to me. So I'm so
Oh,
grateful.
my pleasure. My
Yeah.
pleasure. It was awesome to dive into your offering. So, okay, everyone, thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your week. We'll be back next week. And if you want to access Kerri's work, go to kerryscott.com. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.